Welcome back to JaredBodine.com, the tech you need to know. Today we're talking about TV audio. You know, it seems like sometimes a lot of these brands really put a lot of money into the picture. And do they come up with some fantastic quality screens? But it seems like audio is very often an afterthought with some of these manufacturers, and you can get stuck with a gorgeous picture with really flat and just unengaging audio. So let's talk about some of the things with TV audio that we can do to fix it. Well, TV speakers are full range. They're typically able to cover much of the audio spectrum, but they're also very small, very weak majority of the time. Now, there are manufacturers who do put more effort into making good quality speakers, but really, they're just never good enough. That's why I'm a bit of a home theater enthusiast, and I like to have a full-on surround sound system. There's a good compromise in between the two, from a full-blown receiver to just crappy little TV speakers, and that's the soundbar. The soundbar is often an easy way to employ better quality sound, but even then, not all soundbars are created equal. So I like to look at the TV audio as a 2.0 system, because that's really what most of them are. They have a left channel and a right channel, and no subwoofer channel, so that makes it 2.0. A lot of subwoofers will throw different specs at you. Sometimes they'll advertise that they're a surround sound system, but really they're just also a 2.0 system with better speakers. But you can also get a soundbar that has a 3.1, which would be a center channel, a left, a right, and a separate subwoofer. There is even a soundbar by Sonos called the Arc that has multiple channels, 7 discrete channels. And even though they're all in an array on a single bar, it has tweeters angled at different ways that bounces and reflects audio off of your sidewalls to give you that feel of having a true surround sound system. To me, that's not quite as good as having actual surround sound where speakers are really behind you, but it's a pretty good way to give you a relatively effective stereo feel, or a surround sound feel, in an environment where you don't have to run new wires and mount new speakers. So soundbars, they're not all created equal, but some are better than others. Let's talk about the inputs that you're going to expect from a soundbar. Well, you know, there's this old connection type called the Toslink, and I thought they were kind of going away of the dinosaur. And for a while, they kind of were. They were used in mini disc decks, they were used in CD burners, and that was kind of older technology that was pretty much going to die out. But fortunately, for a Toslink, soundbars came along and became their salvation. So a lot of TVs, they have an optical output, which I think was honestly designed for more like the receiver system. But the soundbars grew in popularity. They started incorporating Toslink optical inputs into the soundbar. The nice thing about the Toslink connection is that one single, relatively low-cost cable using the power of light can send an entire surround sound signal. Yeah, that's right. You could have 7.1 surround sound coming out of a TV that only has a left and right 2 speakers. But it can send that signal on to some other system. It doesn't have to be soundbars. It still could be used by a home theater system, but I see them most often used there for that purpose. Some soundbars are even now starting to use HDMI. And now you might think, well, wait a minute. I thought HDMI was used for the picture. Well, yeah, it is, but it's also used for the audio. And even though a soundbar does not have a display, it does often have an HDMI input, and that's because there is an audio signal embedded into an HDMI. And you can get the full 7.1 or even a 9.1.2 Dolby Atmos system sent through your HDMI connection. And so a lot of soundbars will incorporate that channel of audio in through HDMI, just ignore the picture part, and just take all the audio in and use the audio signal. It's a smart way to go. I've also seen soundbars that can do Bluetooth. I wouldn't recommend using that for your TV. I would save that Bluetooth feature for maybe just playing music with my cell phone on the occasion. And of course, you're also going to see USB inputs. Those USB inputs are very rarely for data. More often than not, they're for like a USB flash drive so you can do updating to the firmware. Occasionally though, you will see ones that can play MP3 files directly off of a flash drive. It's not really a common feature people are looking for anymore, so even if it might have it, you probably won't find yourself using it very much. Some soundbars even include the ability to integrate your digital assistants, like, do I say this out loud? cover the ears of your smart speakers around your house. Alexa. Or Google, or maybe, well, let's face it, those only two we're actually really using anymore. My Alexa speaker just whispered back to me because it heard me whispering. Can't get away from her. I like to have that in my Sonos speakers. That one has a feature where you can choose either one or the other. Most of them are like that. But which digital assistant do you choose? Well, that's another topic for another video altogether. I mentioned a couple times Sonos. Now, I'm not sponsored by Sonos. I don't have any particular love for them, but they're pretty well known. As far as soundbars go, they're some of the higher end ones. And the way they work is a little different than some other ones. They do connect to your home theater through either HDMI or, depending on the model, the Toslink input, which is that optical I talked about. But the surround speakers and the subwoofer and the way your phone connects to them is through the Wi-Fi signal, not Bluetooth, which is a little different, but quite effective. It's very high-end audio that works within your house through your Wi-Fi connection. I do like them, but they are very costly, so there's trade-offs to them. But you don't need to run any wires for them. Well, you don't need to run any signal wires like data, but they're still going to need to be powered because each one of those speakers is not being powered by a subwoofer or by a receiver. So they're going to need to get that power from an AC outlet before you hang them up on the ceiling. So there's a little bit of a give and take on those models altogether. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit here on what I mentioned about the HDMI inputs on these home theater receivers or sound bars. So I mentioned that you can use those just for audio only. And that is a really handy feature, especially if you're using a sound bar. Let me explain, there's a couple different ways to use these. First of all, if you are going to buy a sound bar and use the HDMI input, you want to make sure you find one that supports ARC. That's A-R-C. That stands for Audio Return Channel. That means that it's not a one-way signal. So a lot of times we think of the HDMI as a one-way connection, right? I plug in the HDMI into the back of my computer, the other end goes into my monitor, and the picture and sound go one way out. But with ARC, you can have an audio return channel, which means sound can actually go back upstream to my source that it came from, which comes in really handy with things like sound bars. Nowadays, modern TVs have multiple inputs. They used to have just a single input, or sometimes even no inputs, which is why, like on the original Nintendo Entertainment System, they came with a little modulator that would output channel 2 or 3, because a lot of TVs didn't have an input, so they had to make a channel 2 or a channel 3 for you to play your video games on. But now modern TVs usually have a bevy of HDMI inputs, and it can act as a switcher, which is another reason I think why soundbars still work in a pretty good way compared to home theater receivers, because you don't need the receiver to switch inputs. The TV can do it now. Now ARC is, if it's on the first generation, is limited to a 5.1 surround sound, but for most soundbars, you're good, because most soundbars don't do anything higher than that anyway. There is, however, an eARC, which stands for Enhanced ARC, and that one supports 7.1 and even Dolby Atmos and DTS:X, which are your 3D audio. So those are really important technologies for the future, probably not useful as much with your soundbar, but if you're using it for your home theater, like surround sound system, might be of more use to you. So you can have your TV be the center point. All the audio and video comes into your TV inputs, and then you have the HDMI ARC on the TV go into the sound bar. And instead of being an input, because it looks like HDMI 1, depending on the model, right? Or maybe HDMI 4, whatever. You would think that's an input on the TV. But when you connect your soundbar to what looks like a TV's HDMI input, because of the ARC technology, it'll actually send the audio out to the soundbar on that HDMI channel. Be careful when you're hooking it up though, because if you're not paying attention and you plug your Xbox or Blu-ray into the only HDMI that supports ARC, your soundbar won't get the audio. So make sure you read the back of your TV carefully and look for that ARC connection. Now there's another way to hook this up where your TV is not the middleman, but the end of the chain. And that is where your soundbar sits in the middle, or your home theater receiver in some cases. All your devices can go into your soundbar if it has enough inputs. I've seen some soundbars that have 3 HDMI inputs. Or again, if you have a home theater receiver, it'll have many inputs. Those all come in through HDMI. And then you have a cable from the soundbar out, or your home theater receiver out, into the TV. But what about when you're using the TV as the audio video source? So obviously when I'm using like a Roku plugged into my soundbar, it's going to keep the audio, play it on the speakers, and then just send the picture only to the TV. That makes sense. But what if the source I'm using is the TV? The picture is already on the TV, the audio is coming from the TV. That's again why you're going to want to make sure you use the ARC connection, because then the TV can send the audio back down to the soundbar for when that's the input. But when anything else is playing, like your Blu-ray or PS5, then that audio and video will go through to the TV. It sounds a little confusing, but really it's not that bad if you just kind of take a look at it. I did go online and found this other image. Credit to where credit is due. The Home Theater DIY is where I found these images. They might help you out a little bit, but of course the manuals that you have should probably take care of that for you. All right, that's our short rundown of how to connect and what to look for when thinking about upgrading your TV audio into a soundbar or connecting it to a home theater system. This has been JaredBodine.com, the tech you need to know.